Honkai Star Rail, a turn-based strategy game where you build a team of 4 to take on the various enemies throughout the world. Enemies in this world can range from harmless trotters that immediately try to run away. Dude, I feel horrible every time I have to fight these guys. Like, they're not even fighting back, they just want to hide.
To a Lord Ravager called Ventilia, whose basic attack is to crush a planet in the palm of her hand!
If that sounds like a huge jump in difficulty, that's because, yes it is. And recently, they just dropped their latest version, featuring an all-new area called Penacony, meaning there's even more challenges to take on, and you can bet I was interested. But I've been playing this game since launch, and because of that, a lot of my characters are really strong. For example, meet Sealer, a character who demonstrates why you shouldn't be allowed to have more than one turn in a turn-based game.
Don't mess with me.
Now, having strong characters isn't usually a problem. However, I've really enjoyed Honkai Star Rail's story so far, and I didn't want to just rush through Penacony, which is why I decided that I wasn't going to use my stronger characters, and instead add some spice to the playthrough by running a whole new team. This is how it went. Okay, before we begin, let's go over the rules for this. The first rule is, I cannot use any of my stronger units. But how am I determining if a unit is strong? Well, I've decided that any characters I'm comfortable running in late game activities before Penacony's release are disqualified. I also thought about valuing characters by their level, but I decided against it because in a game like Star Rail, a character's gear is far more important than their levels. A majority of characters' powers come from their relics and light cones, pieces of gear that provide characters with huge stat increases and special effects. Take my characters Serval and Ruan Mei as an example. Serval is a lower level than Ruan Mei, which may lead you to believe Serval is my weaker unit. However, I've had Serval for much longer, allowing me to equip her with better gear than Ruan Mei. The stat bonuses she receives from her relics allow her to keep up with Ruan Mei, and her light cone special effects help enable Serval's kit, allowing her to perform better in battle. Because of this, I'm constantly running Serval in Forgotten Hall, one of the endgame activities for Star Rail, despite her lower level. Unlike Ruan Mei, who I've never actually used before this in any activity, despite her higher level. But understanding that raises a new issue. If gear is as strong as I claim it to be, then the challenge becomes significantly easier because although I wouldn't be able to use my best characters, I could still just transfer the relics and light cones from my best units over to my weaker characters. Which is why there is also going to be a second rule. I am not allowed to swap or take any gear that is currently being used by any of my stronger characters. That way I can't just take Sealer's gear and throw it on whoever I feel like. And those are the only two rules I've placed. Because to be completely honest, that already might be a bit too much for me.
Every petal in life's garden will be swept away. That's a set!
Knowledge is the measure of all things.
Bolts from the boom!
In Honkai Star Rail, there are 43 different characters to choose from, but being a gacha game, I've only managed to collect 27 of them. I would have more if it wasn't for you! And out of those 27, there are only 9 characters that don't breach the first rule. These characters are Yukong, Book, Qingtui, Gunaithan, Ruan Mei, Hanya, Zampo, and Dr. Ratio. Everyone else is either too strong or I haven't obtained them. Either way, I didn't have access to them, but while looking at the characters I do have, I realized this is going to be so much worse than I thought. Do you know what all 9 characters have in common? It's that none of them provide any sustainability. That means no shields, no healing, no crowd control, and no damage reduction whatsoever. So how was I gonna build my team knowing this? Honestly, I had no fucking clue. But picking our main damage dealer was probably a good place to start. And out of all the characters we have, one in particular stood out to me. That was Hook. This is because Hook is consistent, using only her skill to deal most of the damage. Unlike some of the other characters who rely on setups, status effects, or worse, gambling. Since Hook is our carry, the rest of the team will be made up from characters that can support her. And these characters were Gwenithan, Ruan-Mei, and Hanya. Gwenithan was chosen because she can apply burn to enemies, which Hook can take advantage of. Ruan-Mei was chosen because she can give a huge damage boost to everyone, and Hanya was chosen because she bribed me.
Do I strike you as the type of guy who can be bought with money?
Yes, you do.
Well, you're absolutely right.
Now that the team was sorted, it was time to power them up. Right now, they stood no chance against Penacony, especially without a healer or a tank. So they would need better relics, better light cones, and better levels. So before even visiting Penacony, we need to farm some gear. For Hook, we were aiming for the Lava Forge set, a relic set that boosts a character's skill damage. For Hanya, I wanted to get the Messenger relic set, which gives her and the team bonus speed, but I was also hoping to bring her level up. I know I said that levels were not the most important thing, but it sure does help being more than level 1 in a level 60 area. Ruan-Mei was probably the most equipped out of our 4 units, but her artifacts were abysmal. So while farming for Hanya's artifacts, I would keep an eye out for anything that could help out Ruan-Mei. And that left Gwenithan, and for her I planned on getting the free 5-star light cone from the simulated universe, Solitary Healing. I had no idea if it was actually good for her, but it was a free 5-star light cone and I wasn't about to say no.
I'll end your misery.
But as far as the substats go, obviously guys, you want to be running crit rate, crit damage.
And for substats, you want to aim for crit rate, crit damage, and attack percentage. Yeah, the reason why you want speed boost on Hook is because she has 94.
The train is about to make the jump. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Penacony, the planet of festivities, and the current challenge our team must now face. In order to consider this challenge complete, I had to finish Penacony's main quest chain, the Sound and the Fury. If for some reason I couldn't complete this quest chain without breaking our established rules, this challenge has failed. But I was hoping it wouldn't come to that. Now I wasn't entirely sure of what was ahead of us, as I tried remaining spoiler-free. But going off previous story segments, it was safe to assume there were 2 key obstacles I would have to face. The first was the overworld. The overworld itself is not very dangerous, navigating within it is pretty easy, and the enemies typically are a lower level than you. In fact, my only concern with them was matchups. In Star Rail, every character has a type, and every enemy has a weakness. Ideally, you'd bring characters with types that match the enemy's weakness. However, due to the challenge, our options are limited. So anything that wasn't weak to our team became our biggest threats. Luckily, in the overworld, many of these fights can be avoided. However, the same cannot be said about the second obstacle, the Force Boss encounter. Every main story quest up to this point has ended with a mandatory boss fight. These fights cannot be avoided and must be completed in order to finish the quest chain. I had no doubt this would be the most difficult part of Penacony for 2 reasons. First of all, I had no idea what type the boss would be weak to. Avoiding spoilers makes for a really interesting story, but also makes for a really dangerous final boss. So I was just praying my team matched their weakness. And my other main concern was sustain. The longer a fight went for, the more likely we were to lose. This is because we had no shields or healing. Our team is basically a glass cannon, wanting to end fights quickly with their high attack, and exploding if we don't. Unfortunately, every boss in Star Rail up to this point has consisted of multiple phases, which cannot be skipped, dragging out the fight. So how was I planning on dealing with this?
I don't know.
Our story starts by checking into our hotel. Himiko and Welt tell us about a strange distress call they've received, leading us to Penacony. Unsure on whether or not it's a trap, we are told to proceed with caution, but investigate anything that seems out of place. In order to investigate, we are told to enter the Dreamscape, a fantasy-like world we can access by sleeping within Penacony. So we head up to our room and prepare to enter. But before diving in, we take a photo to mark the start of the quest. Penacony had a lot to live up to, easily being one of the things I was most hyped for this year. And for my first impressions, I was genuinely impressed. One thing I was really hoping for was that this area felt like some dreamlike fantasy land. What I had gathered from the limited things I had seen about Penacony is that it was this high life district that only the most wealthy get the luxury to see. Up to this point, Star Rail's world felt pretty empty, but that made sense for a lot of the previous areas, like the first major destination, Belobog, which was a frozen wasteland where everything was fighting for survival. But that wouldn't work here since Penacony was basically a resort, and it seemed that on all accounts Penacony understood that. The map is cluttered with vendors and markers to an almost obnoxious degree. Water shines, illuminated by the lights of the city, and many of the interactables match that fantasy-like aspect, like this giant eyeball wedged into the wall, or even just a random Arctic bear chilling for seemingly no reason. I even remember the exact moment I got swept up by the setting. It was when I heard this weird bell while exploring, having no idea what made that sound, just to turn around and see a walking billboard following me trying to sell me their merchandise. But after I was finished messing around, it was time to get back to the story, which would have me face my first fight of Penacony, when I accidentally got caught up in the middle of an ongoing argument.
Don't even think about running away. You stowaway.
Sorry for bothering you. Please, I need your help.
Who is this? I don't know. What are they doing here? I don't know. Am I gonna help them? Yeah, probably. Alright, let's talk about the team. Truth is, they were not built properly. Like, at all. I kinda got sick of relic farming and really wanted to play Penacony, so I just went in there knowing full well they were not ready for it, and just hoped they would be fine. Unfortunately, on the very first fight of Penacony, so yes, this fight right here, I realized just how weak they were when Gunaithan, one of our team's members, went down to 3 basic mobs. Bad news aside, we still managed to clear the fight since all 4 characters need to be down before we lose. So at least we could continue with the story for now. Speaking of the story, how was it? I mean, I kinda went over it a little, but was it actually any good? It's one thing to have a plot, but being interesting is a whole different thing. Truth is, I can't really find the words to explain it, but if I could, I think it would go something like this.
That's enough, boys.
I met a bearded man. I thought it was pretty hot. He went ahead and told me right there on that spot. He was looking for a stowaway, one that had hid away, one that had somehow got away. Silver-haired lad like my cute friend there. He told us sorry for the mix-up. Honestly, I didn't care. Actually, who is my friend there? I still don't know. She said she's Firefly at Penacony local. I couldn't think of another word that rhymed with local. She made a vocal that she'd repay me in total. Honestly, it was quite the well-mannered proposal. In a dream, surrounded by new faces, it was quite nice to have made a friend who knew so many places. The sights, the sounds, a car, a clock, you say it, she knew it, even the cute little shops. Alright, in all seriousness, every second I spent in Penacony, I fell more and more in love with it. That goes for everything, by the way. The story, the music, the setting, and especially the characters. And no one represented that more than Firefly. During the time we spend with her, we get to know her story, about how she fell in love with a dream, about how she would learn to call Penacony home, about about all her shortcomings and her aspirations. Firefly acts as a foil to Penacony. Throughout the story, you are constantly reminded about how she doesn't belong there. But as you spend time with her and learn more and more about her, you understand why she is so drawn here. There is no other place like Penacony. You won't find Firefly anywhere but here. You wouldn't find her in Bellabog, the Lawfu, or any of the other areas in Honkai Star Rail. Firefly, at least for me, became the voice and face of Penacony. So when she asked for a photo, you can bet I said yes. Now if you're wondering how the run was going during this time, it was honestly pretty uneventful. We did run into a lot of enemies we couldn't beat, but luckily since it was the overworld, we just avoided them. In fact, unless Penacony had a major shift in direction and tone, I didn't see us struggling to finish this.
Excuse me. Why don't you rest
For a little while. Inside the real dreamscape. Oh.
The dreamscape. Or to be more accurate, the real dreamscape.
Really here too?
Himiko's hunch turned out to be true. There was something going on in Penacony. The fantasy land we'd been exploring up to now was all a front, and our investigation gets both us and Firefly caught in a trap. The real dreamscape is nothing like the city of Penacony. It's more akin to a labyrinth, with twisted architecture and shifting walls. With no choice but to explore it, we push through the maze, desperate to try and find a way out from this nightmare. But while exploring, the paths keep shifting, and a voice keeps echoing throughout the walls. At this point, it becomes obvious. No matter which path we take, we will always end up exactly where we shouldn't be.
What's going on? The lights have all turned on. So creepy. But since there are so many doors here, we should be able to leave through one of them. The exact same room?
Help! Help me!
This again. No, wait. Could it be?
Mikhail, do not lift the bucket.
Uh-oh. Which one was the original door?
Please, touch you!
The TVs are so bright. It's hurting my eyes. Careful. Something's up.
Something unto death. The monster that lived within this labyrinth. And now, the monster our team must face. Within only a few turns, it became way too clear that we are not ready for this. Our team's biggest attacks were taking off only about 5% of its total HP. And the worst part was, those glowing dots on the top left of its health represent phases. And since it had 2, we knew it had a second phase. That meant not only are we doing 5%, but we also had to make it through another 100% of its health. And we had to do all of that before it killed us.
Pay attention.
Despite our team's best efforts, it just wasn't enough. There was no way we could beat this boss in our current state. So left with no other options, we ran. Unto death. The wall that was now preventing us from completing Penacony. Up to this point, I had been neglecting my team, and it really showed in our first encounter with death. Our team's artifacts were a mess, their light cones were underleveled, and most of their talents weren't even unlocked. This all resulted in us barely being able to chip off 23% of its health. And the truth is, I wasn't even sure if our team could beat death. There was still so much damage we would have to do before the boss downed everyone on our team. But as they say, there's only one way to find out.
Humanity never conceals its desire to control the heavens. Time to say bye. Boom.
Lance! Forward!
What is this monster? It stacks up the great head.
I spent a lot of time and stamina trying to figure out what the best approach to this fight was. My team's biggest weakness was their lack of defense and healing, so I initially tried farming artifacts that could cover this weakness. But after a bit of messing around with it, I decided against it. This was for two reasons. First of all, I would rather focus on gear that enabled our team's strengths over gear that mitigated our team's weaknesses. So instead of making our team more tanky, I just doubled down on the glass cannon. And secondly, Unto Death has a special effect called Nightfall, allowing them to steal a member of our team. This can happen multiple times and happens regardless of health or defense, meaning it would actually punish us for slowing down the fight. In the end, the goal of our team was still the same: help Hook deal as much damage as possible. To do this, Hook would still use the Lava Forge set from before, boosting her skill's damage, but in addition would also run the Retilient 2-piece set, boosting her attack and skill damage by another 20%. Now, you might be wondering why we weren't using this in the first place. Well, it's because there's a catch. In order to receive the 20% boost, Hook needs to have a crit rate of at least 70%. And right now, Hook's crit rate is... I've talked a lot about Hook, but it's time to talk about Ruan Mei. Because when starting this challenge, I had no idea who to choose between the characters we had available. But no matter which team composition I came up with, one character and one character alone made it on every single team. Ruan Mei, member 81 of the Genius Society, expert in biological sciences, and an avid fan of desserts. From merit alone, she was able to capture the attention of Naus, a godlike being who acts as the Eon of erudition. So yeah, kind of a big deal. But what does that mean for us? Nothing too crazy, just one of the biggest damage buffs in the entire game. After Ruan Mei uses her skill, she gains Overtone for 3 of her turns, increasing all allies' damage by up to 35%. Not skill damage, not crit damage, just damage. The best kind of damage there is. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, for every 10% that Ruan Mei's break effect is over 120%, she increases the team's damage by 6% up to another 36%. Oh, and in case that still wasn't enough, she also increases the team's speed, their break effect, their break efficiency, all type resistance, penetration, and on top of that, she'll still find the time to beat their ass. Show me a greener flag than this, and I'll show you to the nearest psych ward, because I'm not insane, you are. Obviously, hearing all of this raises one question. Is all of that actually enough to win? It had now been over a week since first encountering Unto Death, and our team was finally starting to come together. Although they could still be greatly improved, I wanted to see if we could even make it to the second phase. Because if we couldn't, after over a week's worth of farming, then making it through this fight was just not reasonable. Hook and Ruan Mei would be the key players in this fight. Hook will be in charge of dealing most of the damage. Her skill and ultimate have now both been upgraded to a reasonable level, and her ultimate empowers her skill, meaning her skill does even more damage when used after an ultimate. Ruan-Mei, on the other hand, will be providing crucial buffs that our team will need to make it through this. Without Ruan-Mei's damage buff, there is no world where we can defeat Death before our team is downed. And the speed buff she provides allows us to get more turns in before our defeat. But unquestionably, the most important buffs she'll be providing this fight are all the buffs based around weakness break.
Every breath one takes is a perception of the self.
This is because Unto Death is weak to fire, and our team's main damage type just happens to be fire. Both Hook and Gwenithan can shred the toughness bar with any of their attacks. But what makes this really spicy is one tiny detail I left out about Ruan-Mei. Ruan-Mei, as you know, provides a break efficiency buff, shredding the toughness bar faster. She also provides a break effect buff, meaning when the toughness bar breaks, it deals even more damage to the enemy. But what I didn't tell you is that she also provides a debuff. After Ruan-Mei uses her ultimate, she creates a field lasting for 2 turns, and when enemies are attacked while the field is up, they receive the debuff Thanatoplum Rebloom. When an enemy is afflicted with Thanatoplum Rebloom, they will be marked with a flower above their head. Thanatoplum will remain there until the enemy tries to recover from a weakness break. When an enemy attempts to recover, Thanatoplum will be triggered, dealing damage and extending the duration of weakness break, based off of Ruan-Mei's break effect. This is huge, because weakness break delays the enemy's turn, buying our team much needed time to deal damage. And speaking of damage, those break effect buffs do add up, and when all stacked together, they create our biggest burst of damage. During the week leading to this, I attempted this fight numerous times with various different builds, and our best result was 15% left of its first phase. I still couldn't tell you if it was possible to beat this fight with our team. In order for that, we would still have to make it through the second phase, which meant I would have to keep both Hook and Ruan-Mei alive until then. Between the damage our team was taking and Unto Death's special effect, Nightfall, it honestly seemed unlikely. But talking about it isn't going to get us anywhere, so let's go over everyone's gear and give this another crack. For Hook, it was the same as before, but now we have a crit rate of 70%. It only took a whole week's worth of energy, numerous hours of relic farming, the sacrifice of my firstborn son, and more self-modeling resin than I'd like to admit. And I mean, a lot more than I'd like to admit. Gwenithan's talents have been leveled up, and her artifacts were focused around attack, that way she could deal more burn damage. Hanya is now running the Dreamville Adventure, an upgrade from her old 3-star light cone, with artifacts that boost our team's speed and crit damage. And for Ruan-Mei, I focused solely on giving her break effect, in order to give us the biggest buffs possible. Unto Death, the wall that prevented us from completing Penacony, the push we needed to finally take this challenge seriously, and now, the enemy our team must face. We open the battle with Ruan-Mei's technique. This causes her to activate her skill before any other actions can be taken, and immediately after we follow it up with her ultimate, meaning that all of her buffs are now online. Even with all her buffs on turn 1, we still need to take this fight carefully, because of Unto Death's special effect, Nightfall, stealing a member of our team. But even if we ignore Nightfall, we're still on a short timer. Unto Death will just down everyone on our team if we can't defeat it fast enough. So everything depends on how much damage Hook can deal in her limited amount of turns. But don't worry too much about Hook, because Hanya's there with her ultimate that increases Hook's speed and attack for more damage and more turns. Speaking of turns, it's now Hook's, and time to see just what kind of numbers our team can actually hit. 47,000, or 12%. Now, it's not the biggest number in the world, but do you know what it is? It's enough. And when I saw that number, I realized there is a very real chance that not only do we make it through the first phase, but also the second phase. You see, 47,000 with an ultimate is big, but it's about to get bigger. Keen eyes might have noticed Hook is equipped with the light cone the moles welcome you, and its special effect reads, when Hook uses an ultimate, skill, or basic attack, she gains 18% more attack up to 3 times for the rest of combat, meaning Hook is only getting stronger with each of her passing turns. That alone is a huge deal, but there's actually something else I've skipped over, something I need to address. Now I'm sure you're already aware I've talked a lot about Hook, and as you know, I've talked a lot about Ruan-Mei, but it's time I talk about someone else. It's time I talk about Gwenithan and her special effect. If an enemy takes burn damage while Gwenithan is on the field, she applies Fire Kiss, the biggest debuff our team can apply. When an enemy is affected by Fire Kiss, all damage they receive is increased by 5.5%. And because it's a debuff applied to the enemy, it amplifies not 1, not 2, but every single buff we've applied to Hook. That includes Ruan-Mei's skill, the Mole's Welcome You Lycan, Hanya's ultimate, Hook's artifacts, everything. But get this, that's not even the best part. No, because Fire Kiss can stack up to 3 times, meaning just like Hook, this debuff is only getting stronger as the fight goes on. And once everything was lined up, Hook was able to land a break that dealt over 100,000 points of damage with her skill. When I went into this fight, I didn't even think our team could beat Unto Death, but after seeing 100,000, there was no denying it. Not only did I think we could beat Unto Death, but now I was sure that we would beat Unto Death. The second phase. I didn't consider what the second phase would be. This whole time, I was so obsessed with making it through the first that I didn't even stop to think about what the second would bring. In Honkai Star Rail, a phase transition causes 2 things to happen. First of all, the boss will restore 100% of its HP. This already was really bad for our team. Even with all our buffs, we still want to end fights quickly, which is why I was so concerned about it. But secondly, the boss will unlock a new ability. This can be an attack, a passive effect, a new buff, or in this case, an enhanced version of an already existing move. And that move just happened to be Unto Death's special effect, Nightfall. Instead of taking 1 unit with Nightfall, Unto Death would now take 2 units. Up to this point, we were able to deal with it by having Hanya or Ruan-Mei trigger its effect. Although they were taken, their buffs and debuffs would still be in effect. This prevented Hook and Gwenithan from being taken, which is extremely important because in order to free someone under the effects of Nightfall, you need to destroy the minions Unto Death summons, which are extremely vulnerable to DOT effects like Burn. However, with Unto Death taking 2 units, there was no real way to protect both Hook and Gwenithan from Nightfall. Even if we did, losing 2 units was just a bit too much for us. With the added health bar and the time it would take to free our team, I just couldn't see a world where we managed to defeat Unto Death in time. Honestly, as disheartening as it was to see this, I was still very happy with our team's performance. Hook, Gwenithan, Hanya, and Ruan-Mei all exceeded my expectations. And even though we failed, I was more than happy to call the challenge here. But that's when something I wasn't really planning on happened.
If you don't know the right technique, you might never return from the shadow of death, emerging without a scratch.
Who is this lady? I don't know. What are they doing here? I don't know. But she just healed our team to full. You know, the one thing our team was in desperate need of? So that makes her a friend in my books. But before we can celebrate our newfound friendship, we need to bring this fight to an end. Ruan-Mei and Gwenithan manage to dodge Nightfall, so they immediately get back to work. Ruan-Mei starts reapplying all our buffs while Gwenithan focuses on freeing the rest of our team. During this, the stranger introduces herself as Black Swan and joins us in battle, attacking the enemy once her ability is charged and applying the Arcana effect. which causes the enemy to take wind shear, another DOT effect similar to burn. Thanks to Swan's Arcana and Gwei's burn, we were able to free both Hook and Hanya, but along the way Gwenithan took some serious hits, and was barely hanging on. So if we wanted to win this fight, we had to end it quickly. But because of the phase transition, we were still reapplying our buffs, and Fire Kiss was only at 1 stack, meaning this fight was going to take a few more turns. Luckily, Hanya took most of the incoming damage after being freed, protecting Gwei, buying her a few more turns to apply Fire Kiss. But now both Hanya and Gwenithan were at their limits, and as if things couldn't get worse, Unto Death initiated Nightfall, meaning it was about to take 2 more units. Both Gwenithan and Hanya would be down by the next splash attack, meaning Unto Death was guaranteed to target Hook and Ruin Mei, instantly causing us to lose. In other words, we had to win this before Unto Death's next turn. But with all our buffs now online, and Fire Kiss stacked to 3, I could tell Hook was up for the challenge.
The 10 Lords decree, hereby ordained.
With one final skill from Hook, the mandatory boss fight was cleared, and I can't tell you just how good that felt. Unto Death is a fight I imagine most people didn't struggle on, but for me, it was harder than pretty much anything else I had ever done in Star Rail. Despite being only a story quest, the experience reminded me a lot of Star Rail's other big milestones, like the first few times I stepped into the simulated universe, just to be humbled repeatedly by the final bosses. Or even Memory of Chaos, when I realized I couldn't just rely on my Sealer Crutch alone anymore if I wanted to clear the upper floors. That, along with the whole Penacony experience, made for one of my favorite story quests so far, which of course led to me wanting to complete it even more, so I jumped straight back into the story, where Black Swan explains who she is and what she was doing there. Black Swan is a memo keeper, who has the ability to traverse the dreamscape more freely than others. And when we were caught in a trap, Himiko requested her aid in searching for us. Without Black Swan's help, there was no way we would have made it through that fight. So to show her my thanks, I immediately started to gamble for her. After being caught up on the details, Black Swan told us that Himiko, March, and Welt were waiting for us. So without further delay, we met up with the rest of the crew. Now that we had defeated the mandatory boss for this chapter, and reunited with the Express crew, the chapter seemed like it was coming to an end. Or at least I thought it was. But Welt also stumbled onto his own lead, courtesy of the Stellaron hunter Silverwolf, an intergalactic criminal wanted for at least $3 dues. Although the lead was obviously a trap, we had no choice but to look into it. So we requested Black Swan's help again, just in case anything goes wrong. But before diving back into the dream, we quickly check in to see how Firefly was doing. Black Swan reassures us that she's okay, and with that, we were ready to investigate Silverwolf's lead. We return to the dream, with Black Swan as our guide. Unlike before, we are well aware of the dangers within the dream, and now with Black Swan, we hope to safely investigate the lead. However, when we enter, we are separated from the rest of the Express crew, and possibly more concerning, we find evidence that other people are here as well. And it doesn't take too long to bump into one of them. This is Acheron, a Galaxy Ranger we met earlier by chance. Unsure on how she got here, we realize that other people and bystanders might also get dragged into danger, further increasing the importance of this investigation. We join up with Acheron and continue with our investigation. Unsure on who we can trust, it doesn't hurt to have one more friend we can count on. While exploring the dream, we encounter problem after problem. Enemies swarm the halls, and the world around us still contorts to its own will. We spend most of this time navigating the rooms, finding our way through the puzzling architecture while trying to avoid any enemies that we can. Eventually, we reach a door that we can't pass through as easily. In order to get past, Black Swan intunes herself with the Memoria, searching almost telepathically for another route. However, while searching for another route, she finds something else entirely.
It appears that your friends aren't faring too well. 1, 2, 3. Wait. 3. There's a third person seeking the way to the lobby. Wait. It's the girl who was with you.
Firefly was back in the dream. How or why she was in here didn't matter. The fact is that she is in here, and that puts her in immediate danger. So we headed straight for her. The only thing that mattered now was getting to Firefly as fast as possible.
In my dream, I saw scorched earth and a new sapling emerging from it. It bloomed against the morning sun and whispered to me, "Why do people choose to sleep?" I think it's because they're afraid to awaken from the dream.
We didn't make it, and now Firefly was gone. It felt like only a moment ago I was celebrating defeating Unto Death, and now it feels like Unto Death won. That all that effort was for nothing. To go from such a big high to such a big low, in all honesty, was not something I was ready for, but we couldn't linger around it for too long. Death still looms, so we had to keep going. Black Swan has to go warn the rest of the express crew, so while we wait for her to return, Acheron talks to us about Firefly, apologizing for not being able to stop death, and helping us process our own thoughts. Right now, the only thing on my mind is settling the score with Unto Death. But it's thanks to Acheron I realize I'm not seeing the full picture. Death is only a piece of the puzzle. Instead, we should focus on how Firefly got here. After all, Firefly knew how dangerous the dream was, so it's safe to assume she wouldn't have entered it if she could avoid it. So why was she in here? Did she choose to enter willingly? If she did, she would have taken some sort of precaution, similar to how we recruited Black Swan as our guide, but it was clear she didn't have any when we found her. She was panicked and relieved to see us, which might mean she entered against her will. Maybe she was forced to come in here, or tricked into re-entering. Right now, it's tough to say, but that raises a new question. Why would someone bring Firefly here? And if someone did, then who was it? Because they alone are responsible for what happened. And if they're still here, you can bet I'll find them. But before any of that, we took a moment to say goodbye.
May death be the end of your boundless dream, guiding you back to the waking world. Let's go.
This way. Follow me.
We start moving again, searching the surrounding area for any clues as to what happened. While searching, we find burnt remains of dangerous enemies nearby, evidence that somebody else is here. Black Swan and Acheron agree that this is probably connected to Firefly. However, if it is, that means whoever we're dealing with is far more dangerous than the typical enemies we encounter, and that we should proceed with caution. Although this is somewhat concerning, we're not deterred. Now having a trail to follow, we head deeper into the dream and closer to our suspect. While following the trail, we are yet again forced to navigate the warped reality of the dream. This time there is no path forward, preventing us from reaching our destination. However, more familiar with the dream than previous ventures, and less patient than ever, we stop waiting for it to open up a path and force open a new one. This is all in search of Firefly's last location, because if we can find it, Black Swan can use the Memoria to recreate her final moments and fill in the missing blanks, finally answering the question as to what happened and why Firefly was here.
We landed safely. This is amazing. Is that Firefly?
After relentlessly searching the dream, we finally found it. Firefly's final location and her final moments. While watching them play out, we realize Firefly chose to enter the dream. She came in here attempting to solve the same mystery we were. What is Penacony hiding? And after seeing unto death, she couldn't sit on the sidelines, waiting for somebody else to answer this question. But something else came up while watching through the Memoria. Firefly chose to enter the dream, meaning she's aware of the dangers, and would have been prepared. But in the playback, it's clear that she is nervous, like something isn't right, and she knows it. So we keep watching to find out what it is that's making Firefly so uneasy. And while we continue watching, we hear Firefly address somebody else, confirming she had a companion, perhaps a guide of her own, to ensure safe passage throughout the dream.
Is there someone else? With all this in mind, Firefly and her companion, there should only be one, have entered this corridor together.
Why did you...
It didn't take much longer for everything to start making sense. Firefly's companion turned against her, trapping her in the dream. This is why when we found her, she was alone and relieved to see us. Her betrayer left no other option but to search desperately for a way out, leading to Firefly unknowingly entering Death's lair. As revolting as this was, it only got worse. Because the more we watched, the more we realized, even though Firefly was unaware of what was about to happen, her betrayer was not. Because every part of Firefly's final moments were orchestrated. Her arrival in the dream, the sudden betrayal, and her entering unto Death's lair, all so that she could serve as someone else's bait.
Firefly?
She thought she had escaped, but... After that, it's the end.
Everyone, over there.
It seems like someone has been awaiting us. Ready to step into the spotlight now. Stellaron Hunter Sam.
Careful.
A Galaxy Ranger. And a Memo Keeper. Leave now and nobody gets hurt. Or else, all of you will die here. The detective game is over. You shouldn't be here.
Stellaron Hunter Sam, also known as the Molten Knight, by far the most dangerous enemy we've encountered throughout Penacony, and the one responsible for the loss of Firefly. As the battle begins, we immediately start to apply our buffs. Hanya and Ruin May focus on supporting Hook, and Gwenithan gets to work on Firekiss. After making it through the overworld and unto death, our team is more in sync than ever. But despite that, it's clear that Sam is in a whole different league from the enemies we faced before. Our biggest attacks, the very same attacks that defeated unto death, are now barely dealing 3% of Sam's health. And even with Black Swan's help, our damage is negligible. It almost seemed unreal just how strong Sam was. At this point in the run, I had come to really like our team. Hook, Hanya, Gwenithan, and Ruin Mei were now some of my favorite characters in the game. I started taking them into other activities and used them any chance I got, so I knew their limits. And when I looked at Sam, I couldn't see a world where we'd win this fight. I knew our team could still improve a lot, but that wasn't going to be enough. Our team could be twice as strong as they are now, and we would still lose. That's how big of a gap there was between us and Sam. When I started this challenge, I knew the mandatory boss fight would be the most difficult part. What I didn't know is that unto death, the enemy I believed to be this chapter's mandatory boss fight, was actually just a warm-up for Sam.
Execution underway.
Sam. How do I beat Sam? After facing off with the Molten Knight, this was the only thought I had. A simple question. Problem was, there wasn't a simple answer. Or at least, none that I could see. Sam presented a very unique challenge. Unlike Unto Death, Sam only had one phase, which on paper sounded like a good thing. However, this meant Sam had access to all their most dangerous abilities as soon as the battle started. And even though Sam only had one phase, Sam's HP bar felt like it had double that of Unto Death. In other words, Sam wouldn't restore their hit points from a phase transition. But that didn't really matter, since this single bar was comparable to both of Unto Death's phases combined. This was bad. Very bad. But not the worst part. The worst part of this fight is our type matchup. Our team's types consist of fire, physical, and ice. Fire being our strongest since both our damage dealers, Hook and Gwenithan, are fire types. This means any enemies weak to fire are our best matchups. In fact, we wouldn't have beaten Unto Death if we hadn't exploited their weakness to fire. But as you've probably guessed, Sam, the Molten Knight, wasn't exactly weak to fire. And to make it worse, Sam wasn't weak to physical or ice either, meaning we couldn't break Sam's toughness bar with our current team's elements. Sam was our team's worst nightmare. Thanks to their huge HP bar, we couldn't just burst them down in a few turns. And since they had access to their full moveset, we couldn't survive many turns either, especially since we didn't have any sort of sustain. In other words, our team wouldn't win a damage race against Sam, and couldn't win a battle of attrition either. Which obviously raises the question, how do we beat Sam? I kept with our current team for about a week. I didn't just want to give up on them since I grew attached during the run, so I kept trying over and over again. I guess I'd done this in the hopes that an answer would just magically appear. Even though the situation looked bad, I was still optimistic. But with every attempt, a bit of that optimism was chipped away at. And after seeing the same result enough times, I started to consider that maybe it was time to give up on the team. However, the truth is I didn't want to give up on our team. So instead, I looked at everything we could do to better our chances. With more farming, our talents, light cones, and relics could all be improved. But we also had consumables. One-time use items applied before a battle that can provide up to one offensive and one defensive buff during the fight, such as increased attack and increased defense. After doing a bit of looking into it, our best options were the Penacony snow cone for our offensive buff, increasing our team's attack by 60%. That can be purchased from a vendor within Penacony. And for our defensive option, the prayer machine was our best pick. This heals every character for 1000 HP during the start of their first 5 turns. This, however, cannot be purchased from a vendor until after completing a side quest. The other thing our team could improve on was their action order. Some abilities, such as Hook's ultimate, can push a character's turn forward, or increase their speed. This meant we could actually get a few extra turns, or even manipulate the turn order by deciding when to activate these abilities. The main one being Hanya's ultimate, providing a character a huge speed boost for several turns. This might sound like a small optimization, but it becomes very important when you learn about one of Sam's mechanics. During the fight, Sam will enter an enhanced state. This allows them to use their most powerful attacks and increase their own speed dramatically. It is during this enhanced state that Sam is at their most dangerous towards us. However, this does come at their own risk. If we can attack Sam 5 times with skills, it will cause their toughness bar to instantly break, ending the enhanced state, and causing Sam to take increased damage until they recover from the break. We can't attack Sam's weakness. However, 3 of our units can attack with their skills. In fact, that is their speciality. Hook, Hanya, and Gwenithan all can attack with their skills, meaning once they've had a collective 5 turns between each other, Sam will be broken out of this enhanced state. Ordinarily, this can be difficult to do, since during this state, Sam has increased speed. However, with careful planning, we can push our turns forward as far as possible, minimalizing the time Sam has access to their most dangerous kit, drastically cutting down the incoming damage. Now, during this video, you could probably tell that I became very biased towards this team, constantly talking about Ruin Mei's abundance of buffs or Gwenithan's devastating fire kiss to Hook's constant and reliable damage. I have had no shortage of kind words to say about this team. However, despite seemingly singing everyone's praises, there is one that I have missed. Now, if you play Star Rail, hearing our plan may have raised some red flags. For those unaware, using a skill requires and consumes a skill point, which can be seen on the bottom right. You can have up to a max of 5 skill points and gain 1 every time you use a basic attack. However, if our goal is to use 5 skills as quickly as possible, we would have to save up our skill points to the max. But our team doesn't want to save skill points. In fact, Hook and Gwenithan would like to use their skills as often as possible, meaning in order to save skill points for Sam's enhanced state, we would have to sacrifice a huge amount of damage by weaving in more basic attacks than normal. This is something we cannot afford to do, and thanks to Hanya, we don't have to. This is because Hanya is one of the most unique supports in all of Honkai Star Rail. When Hanya uses her skill, she attacks and applies Burden, her own unique debuff to an enemy. When an ally attacks an enemy under the effects of Burden, that unit's damage is increased by up to 33% for 2 turns. Now, believe it or not, that buff is actually the secondary effect of Burden. Burden's primary effect is that for every 2 attacks an enemy affected by Burden receives, including Hanya's initial skill, Hanya will generate 1 skill point for our team. To give you an idea of how big of a deal this is, most units in Star Rail have to weave a basic attack for every skill they use in order to be skill point neutral. If they don't, they become skill point negative, meaning they are using more skill points than they are generating. Hanya, even if she uses her skill every single turn, is skill point positive. It is solely because of Hanya that this fight might be possible. Her ability to manipulate the turn order with her ultimate and generate enough skill points to break through Sam's enhanced form makes her an irreplaceable member of our team. But the thing is, even if we take everything I've said into account, we still might not be able to beat Sam. Sam is our team's worst nightmare. It will take everything we have, every buff we can apply, every relic we can enhance, every turn we can optimize, and then it still might not be enough. That's how big of a gap there is between us and Sam. Now, I wanted to beat Sam with this team. That's the truth. I really did. However, there was another truth to this as well. In order to get all these things, it would take time. Not just a week, not just a month. Anyone who's tried relic farming knows how long it can take, and I had to do it for all 4 characters. Worst part was, I wasn't just relic farming either. I would need to complete side quests, optimize turn orders, farm up all our talents and light cones just to see if it was even possible for the team. And the truth is, I didn't want to do all of that just to lose. Did you know? This video was actually meant to go up in February. When I started this run, I was expecting it to take a week or 2, maybe 3 if things went bad. My hopes were to ride off the hype of Penacony's release, and see if I could still retain some of the views from the Game Awards video I made last year. My most viewed video to date. In fact, that was the goal for most of my videos this year. The finals, Hearthstone, you name it. They were all there to see if I could get 1 or 2 more views than usual thanks to the success of that Game Awards video. Now, you wouldn't be able to tell this thanks to my upload schedule, but I actually do plan every video I make. Most of them are planned a month or 2 in advance. Some of them even a year in advance. I do this to actually make sure I upload videos at a somewhat reasonable time. Confession, this is not my first channel. I've dabbled with YouTube in the past, and from my previous attempts, I've learned the most important thing for growing a channel is uploading. I know, shocker, crazy secrets YouTubers won't tell you. So my entire schedule was revolved around that, giving me just enough time to make a video I was happy with, while also uploading just enough to grow the channel. Now I know how jarring this whole lore dump probably is, taking a full 180 on the video, but I swear it is related, so please just stick with me a little bit. You see, this channel, SirBigFish, is built off of that schedule. In fact, I'd say 90% of its success comes from that alone, and Star Rail was just another video in that schedule. But the thing about this schedule is that its sole goal is growing the channel. Now that's not a bad thing, but it does mean if I'm making a video and it's taking longer than expected, corners get cut. That's just the truth. There's a deadline and I've got to meet it. And you can even see that on some of my videos. For example, my Risk of Rain video. It's the one I'm most proud of, and I constantly rewatch it to remind myself of the quality I want to aim for. But I always skip the last few minutes. I ran out of time making it, so I rushed the end of the video, and I never got to end it the way I wanted to. In fact, that's the whole point of this channel's outro. It was made so that if I ran out of time, I could easily cut away to it, and it wouldn't be as noticeable that the video was rushed. Throw a joke at the end to make the video feel more full, and boom, we've met the deadline. Now that all sounds depressing as hell, but I knew it was part of the deal, and I'm not upset by it in any means. But it always leaves me wondering, what if I gave myself a little bit more time? What if I didn't cut corners? What if I just ignored the schedule? Destiny, Elden Ring, Monster Hunter. Do you know what all 3 of these have in common? It's that there's a lot of attention on them at the time of making this video. Meaning there's a huge opportunity for a small channel like mine to grow. All I would have to do is cover them. And initially I planned to. I locked them into my schedule months in advance, and nothing would change that. I would be stupid not to cover them. And even if this forced me to rush the video slotted just before them, which happened to be the Star Rail video, I still gave myself enough time to make a video I could be happy with. Now, do you know what a Destiny Titan, Strength Focus Tarnished, and a Greatsword Hunter all have in common? It's that they're known for being stupid. And my classes of choice. So it will come as no surprise that I did not do the smart thing. But what may come as a surprise is the reason, because I actually did plan on moving on from the Star Rail video. Now when I record these videos, there's a lot of footage and files all over the place, and it can be an absolute nightmare to navigate. To make it easier on myself, I use a simple sorting tool called folders. I know, crazy. But the thing is, I'm terrible with names. So when something is sorted under OBS recording Sam Fight 1 Theory Part 3, I tend to get a little lost. So to prevent that, I use photos. It's nothing special, it just covers the folder, but that makes it so I can see a key moment that takes place within the recordings. This gives me a way better idea of what the footage in the folder is focused around. Now, if you've played through the first part of Penacony, then you probably have a good idea of what photos I chose. When I went in to delete the footage to make room for the other videos, it just didn't feel right. Seeing all those photos at once, the highlights of every step here, of Hook, Hanya, of Ruin May, of Gunithan, of Firefly, I just couldn't delete the footage. Not yet. Because something told me there was a chance to make a video I could be really, really proud of. Not just one I'm happy with, but one I could sit down and watch whenever I want to remember what this channel was aiming for. I knew I would lose subscribers and viewership doing this, and I know it's not the video people subscribe to my channel for. But I'm not happy with the content I make anymore. Not when I feel like I can do better. In many ways, that's what the team and Sam represent to me now. It would take a lot of time to see this challenge through, similar to trying to improve on my content. And even if I put all my spare time into it, I could end up with having nothing to show for it. But I'm okay with that. I want to roll those dice even if I might lose. And who knows? Maybe it works out.